Giving us a little bit of information as to who a qualified professional is in some of these services that are being performed. Can everyone see that one? All right. On the following page, we have some information on the central venous access procedures. And again, here we see different types of devices that fall into 5 different categories. Everybody see that? So we have the insertion, the repair, the partial replacement, complete replacement, and removal. So once again, we're going to make sure that we're looking in the appropriate area for assigning these codes. But whatever the procedure is that is being performed. Following page, we have a really colorful table. This is another table. The surgery section has some tables. The laboratory section has some as well. But these are great for trying to be able to match up a lot of the information specific to the codes that you are applying. So if you take a look at this one, it's a central venous access procedure table. And we have, of course, in our first column, we have the insertion. Is it a catheter? Is it a device? This is kind of the process of elimination as far as breaking down our information to find the appropriate code. So we have, when we were going through the PowerPoints, of course, knowing what type, whether it's non-tunnel, tunnel, and whether it's peripheral, and then our ages, of course. So we're just kind of following along based upon our information. If we know it's an insertion, or if we know it's a repair, partial replacement, the complete replacement, the removal, we're matching up. Across the columns, across the rows, we're matching up our documentation the best that we can to the data that we're looking at in this table. Okay? Once we start coding, or if you'll this is really, I like the tables when it comes to applying some of the codes because it breaks it down a little bit more simplified. Instead of having to go through your different code ranges or your code sets, it's kind of a little bit more specific. And again, this is where age begins to represent itself a lot in this particular system. Just kind of fast forwarding here. So I fast forwarded a couple pages to the transcatheter procedures. Where we're starting with mechanical thrombectomy. 2:30? So we've got quite a few notes here as well. We've got quite a few notes. We have the arterial and venous broken down again. So it's important to know whether or not we're in the arterial or the venous. Again, I can't express that enough in this particular section. So, okay, quite a few notes there for only a few codes. I'm not sure if any of you noticed there's only, maybe 6 codes in this particular section. Awful lot of notes for 6 codes, but of course, quite a bit applies to those 6 codes. So. Next, we see the angioplasty that I mentioned. A few notes before that particular section. The angioplasty. Right around page 244. I think that may be the page. 244 is that way you see the hemic and the lymphatic system starting. 240. And this is where we start to see some bone marrow and stem cell services that are being performed. One of our main sections is, of course, the lymph nodes and lymphatic channels. see a lot about different types of transplant, again, that workbench. We see the autologous, we see a lot of these terms reappearing in this particular section of the CPT manual. Introduction for this particular section is common as well. And then the last section for this bodily system is the mediastinum and the diaphragm. And there's only a few particular codes for this bodily system, but again, it's broken down with the incision, excision, resection, endoscopy, kind of similar to what we've seen in other sections of the CPT. Everybody starting to see a pattern here? Okay. In the next section, we have our digestive system, and we've got a diagram in the beginning of that, which kind of shows, from the mouth. What about the lips? What's that?
Can you include them in both somewhere? Are they gonna overlap here?
They do. So that's why I was thinking. So essentially, it is the lips, but you have to keep in mind there's a fine line because it's the entrance of the mouth. So if it's something that's performed on the surface,
Then it's considered like facial.
then it's considered integumentary. If it's in the mouth, it's considered digestive. So that's where you're going to see, and a lot of the times the CPT, and how many of you can agree that the CPT is pretty good about pointing you in the right direction? It really is. So, keep that in mind, but it is, there is a fine line when you're talking about different bodily systems that surface the integumentary. It's kind of like there were certain procedure codes or procedures that were performed on the anus, but it was overlapping with digestive instead of integumentary, but it is surface. So it's kind of, you gotta really just make sure that you're in the right section. One word of advice that I can give is, of course, in this particular week, if you look at the surgery section, we're looking at a particular range of codes, okay? Because we're looking at the cardiovascular and digestive. And of course, the digestive system is code sets 404902499999. So if all of a sudden I'm in section 700 or 1600, or 7,000 or 16,000, I know I'm in the wrong area, right? It's kind of like a little red flag. If you know the code ranges that we're studying each week, and you find yourself somewhere else, it's raising a red flag that, maybe I'm not in the right bodily system. Maybe I have to go back and retract a little bit. It's easy because there are no, dividers, really, other than different colors in between each bodily section. So if you take a look at our first page there, now that I've asked that quizzical question, we have lips, and it does tell us to go to the integumentary system. Okay? But following it down a little bit, what do we have? Excision, biopsy of the lip, okay? So this is the point that I'm trying to make.
In the lip.
Right. This is the point that I'm trying to make, is you really have to look